Hello, I am Scott Carlton, Artistic Director of Singers Programs for the Richard Wagner Society of New York, and I am pleased to have the opportunity to speak with two young tenors who are rising quickly to prominence in the dramatic repertory, especially Wagner, Mahler, Strauss, and Verdi. Clay Hilley is preparing for his appearance in November as Tristan at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, and Issachah Savage is currently performing as the High Priest in Idomeneo at the Metropolitan Opera. Both are veterans at young ages of the most prestigious international opera stages. The Wagner Society of New York recognized early on the outstanding talent of these two stellar tenors, with Clay Hilley being awarded the Robert Lauch Memorial Fund Award in 2015, and in 2012, Issachah received the Ursula Springer Award. Clay performed a recital for the Society in 2018, an occasion made memorable by his surprise proposal to his wife, Sarah. Let me then introduce Clay Hilley and Issachah Savage. So I'm here with Issachah Savage and Clay Hilley. Clay's in Berlin and Issachah is here in New York. I'm really interested in knowing something about your origins as a professional singer. I mean, did you have particular mentors? What was your high school education like in that regard? Anyone want to jump in with that?
I started out as an instrumentalist first. I started out in elementary school, actually, on the trumpet in like the 5th grade, and not quite a year later started on piano. Started taking lessons. And stayed in the band and stayed with piano for the subsequent years, all through middle school or whatever. And then in high school, I still played both those instruments, but then I began to sing in the choir, and that's sort of what my friends that were around me, we were just singing, and I never even sung harmony much in my life. I never knew anything, much aside from screaming in unison as church choir kids, I never even sung a harmonica note in my life. And as I said, I played first trumpet, so I often had the melody even in the band. Anyway, so harmonies fascinated me, and in addition to that, my peers and pals around me were like, "Hey, you kind of have, a solo-y kind of voice. Maybe you should do this or that solo, or like audition for this sort of part." And anyway, so I did, and that's sort of the earliest origins. So no singing till high school, really.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
How about you, Issachah? What's your early story?
My early story began in the church. That sounds like Clay's as well, but my early story began in the church. I've been singing pretty much all my life, but of course not classical music. It was not played in my home. I didn't really hear very much of it outside of the commercials and Bugs Bunny and that kind of thing that I loved to mock when I was a kid. I would run through the house and mock these sounds and make all the faces and do all the things. But I wasn't really, I was never really exposed to it properly, or at least, with any real intention. So I sang in the church, and I loved to sing my whole life. And I said to my mother, when I found out that there was a school in Philadelphia that would let you sing, that's how I explained it. It was a performing arts high school, the Creative Performing Arts High School of Philadelphia. And I said, "Mom, they let you sing. You have to let me go there." So I begged her, because it was so far away from where we were living. And my mother was like, "No, I'm not going to have you roaming the streets of Philadelphia. You're not going to do that." So I begged and pleaded. And finally, Mom agreed to let me at least sing for the people. They had arranged to let me sing, I think it was about a week before school was to open that year. And usually by that time you're placed. They heard me and said, "Yes, we will accept this young man in." I got into Kappa, went through the matriculation there, but I was still very intimidated with this classical sound thing that they were introducing to us. I was accustomed to singing all the church hymns that you could think of. That's what I grew up doing. But in Kappa, my high school choral teacher, David King, was the man who really said to me, "Issachah, you have the kind of voice that you can do anything you want, even opera, he said. He'd lean in and go, even opera. And it was like, David King was a man I admired immensely. So having that kind of blessing from him gave me the courage I needed to go and to really pursue it. He said, you need to study. And they got together with the school district of Philadelphia and found funding, because I come from a very, very meager beginnings. And so they founded funding for me to go and study privately. So that's where my story began.
I see. So, that just underscores the incredible importance of public education.
Absolutely.
Arts in the schools, it's so sadly neglected for most children.
Absolutely.
We really need to work on that as a society. I'd just like to ask you both, moving on now specifically to singing, dramatic tenor repertory, what you're doing now. Did either of you start as baritones and then kind of switch up, or did you just plunge right into the tenor realm without starting as a baritone?
For me, I was never a baritone. I would fake and sing, Figaro, and sing a lot of the baritone kind of stuff just to mock it and have fun with it. But no, I was never a baritone. I never really studied any of the baritone literature. I've always been a tenor.
Okay, how about you, Clay?
Same story with me, and I was always like first tenor. I was always so I was always super high. There is not a whole lot of strength down in like the C below middle C. I need to pick Issachah's brains on how to get all the way down on those B flats and the Gura leader. At some point, we got to talk about that, because I know you just sang it, and I've been working it with John too. I was with him just last week. And 3 weeks ago. Anyway, sorry, but back to the topic. No, I was always a high tenor, and although I guess ironically, the first thing I was cast as, the thing that made me fall in love with classical singing, was a high school production of the HMS Pinafore. And I was cast as Ray Frackstraw, which makes perfect sense, except I had a buddy who was cast as Captain Corcoran, and he was really kind of upset about it. He really, really wanted this Ray Frackstraw role. And I was like, and I started looking at it, and I was like, you know what? I don't like the weepy, sad tenor character. Captain of a ship sounds more fun. Let's just trade. So we were both happy to trade. So I actually went down to a baritone-ish role, right? And then I did also, I did Major General Stanley too at a production of the Pirates, and I did Don Cairo instead of El Remendado. So that's most of the time cast as baritone. But I think in each of those cases I just mentioned, I think all those roles are written in treble clef anyway. So I've never had to sing a role that was written in bass clef. So that's the purity of my tenorhood.
Okay, so you have pedigrees there, both of you. No switching or switching up. That's
not a Melchior. Not a Melchior.
No.
Which is probably a blessing. I mean, many people who come up from baritone have real struggles.
Yeah, I mean, I think Melchior was the only one who could actually get through all of Siegfried, and he
successfully,
right. Who came up as a baritone. But even then, I mean, I think, and mine and Issachah's teacher, he's told me, he said, and toward the end of Melchior's career, he was basically just sprechstimming.
Right.
Because it was just, but he did do it successfully for a while, and that was very rare. Actually entirely rare. He's the exception.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, as you made your ways up the professional ladder, looking back, is there a particular single performance or venue or production that you can sort of consider a pivotal moment for you, or something that really opened doors? Did any one particular thing happen, or was it a slow, steady progression up?
Well, but this question is always difficult to answer because, as you know, in the journey, it is so many moments, and it's hard to kind of say which was the moment. But there are a few that come to mind that were really, really a turning point for me. One was the international competition, the Wagner competition in Seattle. That was the beginning of people beginning, I think, to take me seriously in this kind of repertoire. And after that, it was then the step in that I did in Zygmunt in Die Walküre, in Canadian Opera Company.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Clay?
I would have to say it was the company that called me in February of 21 when I was just sitting not doing anything at all in COVID lockdowns in mine and Sarah's camper in rural Georgia.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, that's the one. That was the one. I think everything a marked turn then. It was like, okay, now it's really time to move over here and get with it.
And what company was that, Clay?
Okay. That would be the Deutsche Oper Berlin, calling about. Unfortunately, Simon O'Neill was having visa issue. Oh, I mean, it was lockdown. He was in New Zealand. It was just it was impossible for him to get to Berlin because the Siegfried was not intended to be in that time frame. It had been postponed, I think, twice at that point. But they were like, well, we've got to do the whole cycle in late 21, and we can't do the whole cycle if we can't get the individual operas up and going. So they called and said, well, Simon can't make it. Would you please take over this gig? And so I got to do the entire rehearsal period. And at Deutsche Oper, they were doing PCR testing every day. So in the morning, we would submit a sample like at 9:30 or something. They would have it back by 1:30, and if everyone was clear, we would rehearse. And so it ended up not being presented for an audience, or it was presented for a very private audience. And eventually, only the one performance we did ended up having to be with piano. We even made it through the final dress, the Generalprobe, with full orchestra, and they were playing amazingly. And then like the day of, 1 out of 80, so 79 negative tests, there was 1 positive test. And so they just canceled the whole orchestra. And so there was basically no audience. It was like my wife and some company members and Donald Runnicles conducting a pianist in the pit. And so, but anyway, that was the one gig. That was the one gig that led to the other things. It's just.
But you said you did get to sing the rehearsals with the orchestra, though. Yes.
Yes. We made it all through. We made it through we had a Hauptprobe and we had a Generalprobe. But it was like I said, it was the day of the show, y'all, and there was one positive test. Anyway, no matter. They still paid. They paid me a beautiful, rehearsal, very generous rehearsal fee. They even gave me 2 performance fees. It was slated for 5 shows, and we did 1 with piano, and they paid me for 2. But it was more than It was, and then there was the cycle, of course. At the so it eventually happened. People eventually saw it. Yeah.
Bravo to you, my friend. Bravo.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
How did you weather the pandemic, Issachah? I mean, we all have our stories, and we'll probably we've all been changed for life by that whole era. But how did you weather it? Did you have work, or did you just sit on the sidelines?
I did have very, very minor work. I didn't have any major things. I was pretty much like Clay, sitting around, looking for artistic outlets to do. And fortunately, and thanks be to God, to a lot of these companies that were reaching out and branching out to do new and inventive ways of presenting art. They were on, these Zoom meetings and the Zoom platforms to speak, and Zoom masterclasses, Zoom recitals. I did recitals, masterclasses, interviews like this. All of this online. I even did one performance online as well. So I had a little bit of things like that, but not really any real performances. My Tannhäuser, which happened eventually at LA Opera, was supposed to happen during that time, and it had been canceled and postponed twice. Not canceled, but postponed twice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, let's move on then to your repertory. This is a little bit hackneyed, this question, but I have to ask it. Do you have a favorite role, or a role that really speaks to you that you always love to return to? I know you. That's the tough question in some ways.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is a tough question, and I don't have a clear favorite, because I'm variously inspired sort of whatever I'm working on at the moment. Sometimes that ends up being my favorite role for the.
That's my answer. Yep.
Yeah. I will say. I say like, Siegfried is really fun. It's a role. I mean, my wife sees me and she's like, You're perfectly Siegfried, but that's because you're being perfectly Clay on the stage. There's nothing like you're the same guys. Like you just kind of generally don't respect authority. You're very headstrong. You're very stubborn. You set your mind to something and you're just going to do it. It doesn't matter what anyone says. So I identify heavily with that character. And he's young, he's defiant, he's not very smart, but he's very, he dreams about things and he loves nature. And I'm from the country, I mean, cows and horses and pastures and woods and creeks. I mean, I had this great childhood in rural, Georgia. And I think, Siegfried, he just raised in the woods, anyways, I identify heavily with him, and obviously it's a glorious score. It's difficult, but I much prefer Götterdämmerung as far as the vocal difficulty.
Yeah.
Götterdämmerung is a walk in the park but it's not objectively, it's not, but by comparison it is. Yeah. I also think I will, although I haven't yet. I would say, my favorite opera in the world is Turandot, okay? And I've still never sung. I covered a whole run of 12 performances out in San Francisco in late 2017. My buddy, it was Brian Jade's first run, and he did all 12 magnificently. So my services were never called on to be on stage, but just being around it, I'd been in the chorus in Atlanta like 10 years prior to that. And I mean, it's just, you just can't beat that music. So I'm hoping that there'll be some opportunities in like maybe the Puccini centennial year, which would be, so the centennial of his death is 24, and the centennial of the debut of Turandot is going to be 26. So maybe there'll be some of those. Actually, Sarah and I, she's going to be singing to you, and I'll be singing my first call-off at a company in America. I can't say which. It's not one of the giant ones, but I'm just thrilled to do it, and I think that will probably be at the very tip top, personally.
Yes. Issachah, is Kalof in your history or on the horizon for you, or do you sing Kalof?
I have not sung it. I have studied it, very widely, and I was asked to sing it 3 different times, but it was never really possible with the schedule that already existed. It was never possible. I don't know that Kalof is ideal for me, but I won't know that until I sing it, until I really dig deeper into it.
Yes.
But no, the role that I typically like to return to, and it's only for sentimental reasons because I love the part, but it's because it's where I started to develop my Wagnerian wings, and it's Siegmund. It's because that's my home base for where I started to develop my Wagnerian chops.
Yes. Yes, and what about the character speaks to you in particular, or it's wonderful music. We know it's fantastic music, but is there something on a deeper level about the character that speaks to you?
I think it is his relentless sense of searching. He's not going to stop until he figures all out, until he gets it. I love the sense of it, the devoutness of his sense of pure love, how he discovers that, having had no real example of it, thinking of his father, having had no real example of it, but his pure sense of love that he's able to really, selflessness, really, to get to Sieglinde and to discover himself through her. It was amazing to me.
Yeah. It's really quite a role. And, Issachah, while I have you here, I just want to briefly talk about Patricia Sage.
How much time do we have?
Not a lot.
Well, I will say this in a nutshell. Pat Sage she was an amazing, amazing woman on so many fronts. I mean, her selflessness, her advocacy, her support of me and love for Wagner and music in general. Pat Sage was just a force to be reckoned with. And she was instrumental in my career because she ushered me into Wagner when I thought she was nuts. I did. I honestly, I thought she was insane. I mean, and she had her challenges, believe me. That personality was pretty big. But I thought she was insane to think, Issachah, maybe you should give this aria a look. Pay attention to this. Just play with it a little bit. She was the first person to make me be more intentional about my inner person, what that was doing, how that's feeling, what that she would often say in our lessons. She would say, Issachah, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here yet. You only have today, right now. What are you going to do with the energies of today? She was very big on the energy and the energy of music and the energy of your inner person, incorporating that and using that. She was the first person to make me really dig deep into that. But she ushered in my Wagner life, really.
Yeah, she was, as you say, a force of nature.
She could devour any Wagnerian score. It was like the second you set a Wagnerian score in front of her, Patsy would develop 4 different hands, additional hand, and she would just go at that piano like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah,
she was amazing.
She was something. I wanted to bring her up because I was acquainted with her and felt that she was quite amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I should say this too, if I may.
Yes.
I should say this too. Patsy was the only person also to ever say to me, Issachah, I know that I was at the time when I was working with Patsy, I was living in DC. And so I would often have to make the commute to New York to get to her. And it was very difficult. At that time in my career, I had no money. I mean, it was, very difficult. Patsy would say to me literally, don't worry about paying me. Put it towards the tab. Don't worry about paying me. She would not take money. We had to hide money in the piano. I had to hide it in cards and put it under her. She wouldn't take money from me. Wow. She knew I was struggling, and she all those years, she would not take a dime from me. Yeah. That was Pat Sage.
That's something you don't find often, for sure.
Not at all.
Yeah. Well, we spoke about your sort of roles that particularly speak to you. I'd like to move to the question. Is there you've both sung in many major houses around the world. Is there a particular house that was really a revelation to you, or that you feel like, I could sing in this place all night? People often say, or pianists, I could play all night in this theater. Anyway, do you have particular theaters that strike you that way? Maybe Clay could answer.
Yeah, the big theater on the Green Hill. I was, my gosh, when I did the jump in for Götterdämmerung and Bayreuth, the sound that you hear on the stage, and I know, Scott, you were a chorister there for many years, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever hear that anywhere else? It sounds like, it sounds like a recording studio, but like everything, the best about it's so full, and everybody there is playing, just like you were saying about Miss Sage. I mean, I'm sure those players most of them are playing from memory. I mean, they've been there for decades. They know it so well. And just the way that shell is designed to throw the sound up on the stage it was unreal. I get like emotional thinking about it. I mean, my voice sort of chokes up when I think about just hearing that opening, like E flat, bum 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 bum, and I started giggling. And the thing, what you saw, I'm sure you saw the production, and Siegfried and Brunhilde are the furthest thing from happy in this production. It's a marital quarrel. It's all the lines all those lovely poetic lines of love, had to be delivered sarcastically because of the nature of the production. But I mean, when they first arrived at that, when the Norns were gone, and then like the curtain came, or we entered in the dark, where there's that transitional music. But when it landed on that E flat chord, and I heard those bass trombones, I just started shaking. I just started giggling with delight. I was like, this is not happening. This is unreal. So I would say that would be the acoustic that most inspired me. And I haven't even seen anything there as an audience member. I did one audition there several years ago, but that was just me on stage and a pianist, and it was very cool. I mean, it was great to say that I'd at least done an audition on stage. But that's my answer, and I can't think of a distant second.
Yes. How about you, Issachah? Do you have a house you particularly like?
Well, I don't have a story to offer quite like that. I mean, I enjoy the Met, of course. I also enjoy. I've worked at the Disney Hall as well a few times, and there's a theater in the Bordeaux Opera House is absolutely quite lovely. In Toulouse, Capitole. Yeah, those are among my favorites.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, singers, I think, are trained, or they learn to sing in any acoustic and not be thrown by any place that's dry or unforgiving or too big or too wide.
Yeah.
Any of the problems that you face. So it may be a bit of an unfair question because you get out there and you sing no matter what.
Pretty much.
Similarly, the question: do you have a particular conductor who really molded you or gave to you something that was essential to your career? Perhaps you start with that.
I don't know. I don't know that I would say molded, but definitely gave a lot to my way of thinking, my way of processing would be Riccardo Muti. Working with him 2 or 3 times that we've worked together, just his way of going at a score. And then, of course, Fabio Luisi is just amazing to work with. The amount of integrity they put to the score, where they approach it not from just the orchestra itself. You can see right away it's not just orchestral. They are approaching it as a whole cohesive thing, how every piece really does fit together. And you can tell very clearly the differences between a conductor that really does care about the vocal line and the ones who don't. You can tell very clearly. And Fabio Luisi, Gustavo Dudamel, Yannick Seguin, and of course, Riccardo Muti are among my favorites.
That's great. How about you, Clay?
Mine is, I'm going to be political about it and just dodge the question, because I think if I start naming names, then perhaps those that I forget to name unintentionally may take offense. Yeah. I love the art of conducting. I mean, I echo everything Issachah was saying. The ones with the singers, the sixth sense. The perspicacity, if I may use a big word, of like just understanding like how it all, like you said, it's the Gesamtkunstwerk. It's like they know, you just know when I forgot to take a sufficient enough breath, when I got confused, when I got so deep into the staging of something that maybe I didn't like do my singing process or something. The ones that just know that we've done 7 shows now, but on the 8th show something weird happened. Or rehearsal or whatever. But when we're routining these things, and they just know when something isn't quite like, and they're there for you, and they come to your rescue. I also love any conductor who on a fermata already has their hand in the air. Don't deliver a fermata down here, please, conductors. If you're on if there's a fermata on the 4th beat, please already have your baton in the air, because I break out in hives when I think about like being strung out, because I don't want to I'm a team player. I really want to be. I don't want to be the boss in that moment. I want the maestro to be true to the definition of the word master. You call you a master for a reason. Like you're in charge. And I've been privileged to work with so many. who do get that. But I think that's my one big thing, to be honest.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Well, you can
have your hand in the air on Fermatas, please.
Well, you can save, the particulars for your memoirs someday.
That's right. I've still got too much debt to get out of to start accidentally neglecting to mention names. So
Right.
Smart. I just didn't see it that way. I think, and those favorites that I mentioned may change. They may change in the next 5-10 years, because there'll be new conductors. There'll be new people, some of those that are conducting now may not be conducting in 10 years.
Yeah.
So,
Indeed. Yes. Well, let's move on then. I wanted to ask you both, since you're now really international performers basing yourselves all over the world, there's an inherent instability there in traveling, being away from home for long periods of time. Some singers thrive on this. Some, pianists, other performers thrive on it. Others find it emotionally difficult. How does this lifestyle suit you in particular? That'd be my next question. Perhaps you, Issachah, could pick that up.
I think both can be true, where you get challenged by it sufficiently and you thrive off it as well, because that's kind of where I'm at. I get to a place where I can get really, really challenged by it, where 9-10 months out of the year you're gone, but pardon me, you're gone, and then my mind goes back to the pandemic, sitting home for extended periods of time where I felt like I was losing my absolute mind. I was yearning to be on the road, to do something, to go to have the long lines at the airport. I was just yearning for some sense of normalcy. But what I've learned about myself during that period is that it's not just something that comes along with the career. It's not just business as usual. It's really a part of my life. And so I identify with it. So it's not as much of a challenge, even though it can get on your nerves a bit, but I identify with it. I fare with it pretty well.
And how about you, Clay?
I could answer the question by saying literally the only home my wife and I ever owned had wheels on it. So being in one place, I get cabin fever after a little bit. My personality and Sarah's personality, we love change of scenery. We really, that was one of the biggest, like this guy was saying, that was one of the toughest things about COVID, was that it was so unnatural for us to not have like a change of scenery. We had to build that in. We had to actually plan and proactively be, okay, in 2 weeks, we're jumping in the truck. We're going to drive to see friends like in Texas. Okay. And from Georgia to Texas, like we had to plan road trips. We had to plan, the things that would normally be built in to our life. We had to be proactive on that, because we catch ourselves getting a little depressed, getting a little, just Wanderlust. We had the Wanderlust.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, thankfully, yes, it does comport with our personalities.
That's good. Good. That makes it a lot easier. Some really have difficulty with it.
To clarify for those that don't know, my home literally, Sarah and I literally did live in a fifth wheel camper from we just sold it in 22 in the spring of this year, and that was the only home we ever had. I dragged the camper from Texas to San Francisco, back to New York, then from New York back to San Francisco. Matter of fact, when I sang my recital, in January of 18, right before I started covering Parsifal, that was from my camper. We had parked the camper over in Jersey City. There's an RV park there, and I commuted to the Metropolitan every day from my camper. So that's what I meant by my home has wheels, for those that didn't know the backstory of the camper living.
Yes. Well, and as you mentioned, we know that Klaus Florian Vogt set up his camper in the parking lot there behind the theater at Bayreuth.
Yes,
I was perfectly happy to live out of his camper there. So
right.
there's a precedent there for camper living as a tenor.
Indeed.
Yes, you know, you will come now perhaps to the idea or the concept of recital singing, concert repertory. Um, Clay, you did a wonderful recital for us in 2018. Issachah, you've done events for us that have been so well remembered and for which we're so grateful. Um, can you maybe speak to the recital repertory? Is that left you now that you're in the singing the big guns on the opera stages,
Mm,
or are you going to, do you think, come back to it?
no, 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 no. For me, I think it's imperative to always go back to song literature. For vocal health, for since the sensibility, the innate sense of intimacy that's required in opera, we get that training also in song and storytelling. So I like to go back to it. Doing An die ferne Geliebte, doing Die schöne Müllerin, doing these kind of the intimacy of that puts you back center where as an opera you can get pretty wide and you can kind of go out there a little bit, but coming back a little bit more intimate where you have to put the voice in these constraints and make it work versus it being as broad as opera can be. It's a good training to always go back to, and I try to do that as much as I can.
And Clay, do you still sing the recital rep, or are you too busy?
Oh, well, I don't have any recitals planned, but I would echo everything as the guy said. As far as specific repertoire that I like, I would say I think my favorite thing was the thing that I gave the cycle that I gave a little taste of at my Wagner recital. It was the Janacek piece. It was the Diary of One Who Vanished, and I did that for my grad recital at Georgia State in 2007. And I would love to revisit that whole thing again. It's such a cool story, such excellent music. It's not just the tenor solo. There's actually there's a mezzo soprano who sings the role of a gypsy, and there's also kind of an offstage little like trio of women that sing, and there's also a giant piano solo. And it's just a cool piece that I would love to revisit anytime. But that's the one that pops into my mind. I also love the Opus 39 Liederkreis so much, the Schumann.
Yeah.
I love, I've never done An die ferne Geliebte, but I think it's absolutely beautiful, and would love to take a look at it. I've sung some of Schöne Müllerin, but I think my favorite is the Janacek and the Schumann Liederkreis 39. But I don't have any plans, so but I'm open to it. If you know any pianists that want to throw something together, it could be fun.
No, they are magnificent works, and with luck, we'll hear you before too long in that material, and you as well, Issachah. This is a bit of a mundane question, but it always interests me. Do you have a particular routine on a performance day? Let's say you have an evening performance with a long stretch. Do you have ways to keep yourself energized or diverted or whatever you need to do to stay ready and available for that evening?
Go ahead, Issachah.
Well, mine it like you were saying, it kind of depends on what the role is. Um, I don't like Patsy always trained me to kind of go within to figure out what you need, to be one with your energies, to figure out what you need. So I don't try to have a strict, this is what I do every single time, every single day. No, I go off of what my body and my energies are telling me that I need. If I need to lay in bed for the half a day, that's what I'll do. If my energies is telling me that it's you need to get up and get your body moving, go for a nice long walk, then that's what I'll do. But one thing I don't do is eat. I can't eat right before the performance. I really can't. I have to, if I'm going to have something, it'll be earlier on in a day. Maybe coffee and boiled eggs is my go-to. I'll have that, and then after before the performance is it has to be at least 4 hours of nothing. Unless you want pure projectile, I have to have nothing. And then in mid of the performance, I'll have something a little small in there to give me fuel to keep going. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Just rest, be quiet. Warm ups, I take my time with that. That's I'll usually wake up and and hear my voice, and I'll start humming to feel what it feels like. And then throughout the day, I'll do minor hums and maybe little lip trill or buzzing or something like that. But I don't do any heavy warm-ups like that. No.
How about immediately prior to the performance? Do you have a warm-up routine, series of vocalises that you make you feel really ready and in the saddle?
You mean right before the performance, you mean?
Right before the performance.
I'll do a lot of, because the long goose egg notes, which is Wagner, Patsy calls it goose egg notes, which Wagner is built on, those long stretch big notes. A lot of those are there. But what tends to get lost, I find, in my own Wagner singing is sometimes the fast moving notes. So what I make myself do for fluidity and also for flexibility, I sing melismas like you wouldn't believe, up and down, up and down, up and down. And it gives my voice the flexibility so that when I go and do those big goose egg notes, it's not strident. It's there, but it's not hard. It's just there and buoyantly sitting there, So I'll do that. I'll crank out one or two high notes, and then that's about it.
Yes. You don't leave your high notes in the dressing room.
In the dressing room, that's right.
How about you, Clay?
Some high notes that I do leave in the dressing room are, I will always, if the highest note in the roll is a B flat, I'll definitely rise up to a C. If the highest roll is an A, then I'll definitely go up to at least a B. I mean, even in Götterdämmerung, even for those high C's on the horn call, I'll make sure I vocalize, even though it's like it's like voce finta. It's like it's not like a real thing. But like I will sing a high D. I'll make sure that I've at least made my voice like make that sound, just so C will feel like a lower note.
Right.
That's
so,
what I,
so you're not singing on your ceiling.
Yes,
That's
sir.
Right.
You got it. You can't do that. But those are the high notes that I'm happy to leave in the dressing room. But we have the same story. I'll wake up in the morning of a performance and I'll just go, ooh, ooh. Mm-hmm. And then I will know just from that little falsetto-y little hoot.
Yep.
I will know if I've got like upper range problems or the high notes are going to be, the high extremities are going to be difficult.
It's going to be difficult. Yeah.
I'll know that. And then I'll know that I might need to do something about it. In addition, maybe an hour or two after I've been awake, I'll sing a scale. I'll just do like, a 9-note scale up and down, or my go-to is I just start on middle C, which I don't have perfect pitch, but it's like, I go, ma, oh, ma, oh, ma, ma, oh, ma, oh, ma, ma, oh, ma, oh, ma. Or sometimes I'll go up first on it. And then I go to the extremities. Then I'll start toward the bottom and just work, relax into the low stuff. But that's usually not, I usually don't even do that until I'm like literally in the dressing room. I'll sing a 9-note scale. I'll go, I'll do that a few times and see how high I can take it. But then I won't do it. If it all seems fine, I'm not going to touch it. I mean, I'm strong believer in not over warming up. No. Right. And normally, in addition to that, I always just mentally, I have my score with me in the makeup chair. I'm not very social in the makeup chair. I look at every word at every intermission. I'll do it. I'll do act one. I'll do all of act one sitting in the chair. I will mouth every syllable just to make sure that like some sort of stage jitter, doesn't, which I don't really get much. I mean, thank God, but anything can happen in a live performance. So I want to be as prepared as I can, as well as I think I know a role. I'm looking at every word and every rest.
All the time.
Everyone, yes, sir. And then act two, it'll happen intermission,
Yeah.
So there's that for mentally. And what else was I going to say? Oh, as far as, in addition to the vocalises, I will use material from the show to warm up. For Siegfried, I always say, "Da hast du die Stecken schändlicher Stimper." If I've got that, I'll be fine. And before I go but when I come off stage for the end of Act 2 of Götterdämmerung, you know, we get the Meine Freund Mutter with the high C there. I mean, you better believe I'm singing that vocally. I'm singing that one, and I'm doing it one pitch up. So I make sure I'm not going to freak out. And then an intermission for Götterdämmerung, in addition to going over the all the text, every single word, and we know there's a lot of words in Act 3 of Götterdämmerung. I will still find time to do a horn call where I sing, where I squeak out a high D, just so I know I got the high C.
Yeah. Same thing when I was doing Tano, it was the same thing. One of my colleagues came by and asked, they said, well, Issachah, are you going to warm up? I said, no, not really. He said, are you going to warm? I sang the Ditonalo, and I did that 2 or 3 times, and that was more than enough.
Yeah.
You are set. You're set. Good.
It reminds me of the story of Heifetz, the great Jascha Heifetz. Before he played the Beethoven concerto, he would play through every single note ultra slowly. No matter how many times he had performed that work in his lifetime, because there's a slow, fast nature to thinking.
Yep.
Sometimes we have to really slow it down to make sure.
Say the name of that artist again. I'm sorry.
Heifetz. Yeah. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion, guys. I maybe would like to close with the standard question about the up and coming singers, the young singers, the ones who are trying to break through, the very young kids who are fascinated by this art form and think they might be cut out for it. Do you have any advice for them now that the world's back up and running and the auditions are happening and so forth? Any particular advice for the up and coming singer?
I'll let you take it, Clay.
Okay. Well, my 2 things are, you got to find the right teacher for your voice. You've got to get your technique in order. It's just got to be so solid at whatever level you are. Should I have been singing Siegfried at 21? No, and I didn't try. I mean, whatever. But for whatever stage you are in life, you need to be applying, your full voice to it. Your entire range needs to be solid by age, I think for men, I would say by age 23, 22, 23. You really need to you need to know how to hook into the top notes. You need to know how to cover. It's going to be tweaked throughout your life, but you need to know your registers as a man. I can't really speak. I think female singers are better at being more ready to go, maybe by 18, 19 or 20, just because the nature of things, because the nature of the toll that puberty takes on the voice, for men as opposed to women, because, I think men have a much newer voice, when they're 13. And so it's just going to take a little bit longer to become fully mature. So I would say you got to know your technique. You got to do the absolute best you can with your instrument at every age point. Okay, and then point number 2, learn Italian and learn German. If you're going to be over in Germany, take the time. Learn it when you're young, because it's hard. It's so much harder, when you're older. I'm 41. It's not sinking in very well. The Deutsch. Our life is not as. I have a funny colleague who says, learning German, it will really lube your life. Like, it really just helps things. Helps your. I mean, in these big rehearsal. In these giant opera houses over here, or the major ones. The rehearsals are in English. It's fine. If I request it, and that's cool. But just living your life, just at the grocery store, and just trying to understand bureaucracy and trying to, it's just going to be so much more helpful. You're going to be a much more expressive singer. You're going to memorize things faster when you know these languages. But I think, learn Italian, German, and just have as good a technique as you can at all times of your life and all points of your vocal development.
Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
What would you say, Issachah?
I would just echo everything that Clay said here. I mean, wonderful, wonderful information, and definitely you need to have a strong technique knowing your own instrument, not by comparison to anybody else's, knowing your own instrument, because what cover looks like and what it sounds like in one instrument will not be the same for you. So knowing that, so I echo what Clay is saying, but I would want to just add is that, and thank God it is talked about more now, the mental fortitude that is required for this business. It cannot be overstated how much it is important to have your own mind and your own head screwed on straight. Being out here constantly in the business, changing different cultures, different time zones, different languages, different conductors, different colleagues, it's a lot of differences that one experiences all the time. And having the mental fortitude to be able to handle that is important. Hearing the voices that come into your head when you're out there, particularly for young singers, when you have to hear it from the coaches and the director and the conductor and the teacher, and everybody is saying something to you. And I find it so important to really, really become tethered to your own mind. Find what that is. Really, really, really find what that is, because you're the only person that is with you 100% of the time. So what that gives me is that what you say to you will matter most. After you've gotten in all the information, what you say to yourself will help you in the thicket of when the stage director doesn't like the conductor. But you got to listen to both of them. when a colleague is being less than pleasurable to work with, you got to figure out what you say to yourself helps you fare in any difficult situation. Staying calm, having that mental fortitude is like gold, coupled with a good technique, of course.
The story you tell yourself about yourself is
Yes, sir. Makes all the difference in the world. Being able to hear someone say that, okay, you're going to an audition. Okay, I'm saying before the judges. No, I used to reverse the narratives. No, I'm not going to an audition. I'm going to a hearing. I'm going there so they can hear me. It's not an audition. I'm not auditioning. They're hearing me. They're not judging me. No, they're deciding whether or not they'd like to hire me now or later. Just those kind of things. I mean, it sounds really minute, but it makes a vast difference in how we approach our art, how we go through the process. Another thing I would encourage is that any young singer, enjoy the process. Have good fun with it. Love the process of figuring out what this character is doing and what is he saying, and love the process of figuring out why in the world would Wagner write that rhythm like that on that word? Why would you do that? Those kind of things. If we enjoy the process and tell ourselves good things, it's not work. It's fun.
I'm still convinced that sometimes there's no good answer to why he wrote some of those rhythms and Gutter Down Acme of Siegfried and all of Tristan. So.
Right.
Or it'll take me at least 50 years to come up with some good hypothesis. So here's hoping.
I'm sure someone's doing their PhD thesis on that very subject somewhere. Maybe we'll learn about it.
Forward me the dissertation. I'm happy to read it.
Well, Issachah Savage Clay Hilley, I really want to thank you for your time and your insight. And our membership and others watching are going to profit greatly from an inside look, and it's certainly beyond the cliche what you've given us today. So I thank you, Issachah. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Neo and your future performances. And Clay, your Tristan right now in Berlin is what you're working on. Is that right?
That's right. It's just it's never far from me. It's right. Sarah makes fun of me because every time I'm working on memory, I just carry the score around as though it will just sink into my head by proximity and osmosis.
Yes. Fantastic. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Ciao.